Trump spent much of the day in North Carolina speaking about the recovery from Hurricane Helene. He also continued to make false claims about the government's response.
They spent a lot of money on bringing illegal migrants, people that came into our country illegally, and taking them in, and all of the money they've spent, numbers that nobody can even believe. So they don't have any money for the people that live here. They got hit by one of the worst storms, possibly the worst storm ever, but one of the worst storms.
Vice President Kamala Harris is making stops in the 3 blue wall battleground states Monday: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She appeared alongside former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, a Republican and staunch Trump critic. In Pennsylvania, Harris called Trump a, quote, unserious man.
There are things that he says that will be the subject of skits and laughter and jokes. But words have meaning coming from someone who aspires to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States.
Let's bring in CBS News political director Finn Gomez and campaign reporter Jake Rosen. Good to have both of you. Finn, this is not the first time Harris has appeared alongside Liz Cheney. What can you tell us about their relationship and who Harris is hoping to bring into her tent with her appearance?
Good evening, Lindsay. Yeah, politics sometimes makes odd partnerships here. These two differ vastly on policy. They differ vastly on their political perspectives. One place they do converge on is they both believe that Donald Trump is not a good choice to be the next president. And that's why they're campaigning together. Why she's campaigning with Cheney, why Harris is campaigning with Cheney in these blue wall states is because she believes that Cheney can help her make a strong argument to moderate Republicans and independents in those key battleground states. That crucial electorate, to some analysis, they believe that they are up for grabs, especially now with just 15 days out until Election Day. So this effort right now is to really appeal to those in the center.
Jake, what is Trump's strategy in North Carolina, particularly in doubling down on hurricane recovery disinformation?
Well, this is Donald Trump's 12th day spent in North Carolina. We have 3 stops today. He's already completed 2, with one more with Ben Carson and one of his sons later tonight in a faith-based approach. But we've seen Donald Trump in the last couple of weeks go down there, not just to North Carolina, but also to Georgia, and make a point to voters that the government is not doing enough. Now, obviously, like you said in your open, Lindsay, that a lot of these claims are false or misleading about where exactly that money is going in terms of hurricane relief, and some of those statements have been outright lies about money going directly to migrants. But remember that he's making an appeal that you've been forgotten, which is kind of one of the broad appeals across all of Donald Trump's arguments as we head down the home stretch of the campaign. But it's also, in your state specifically, look at how Biden and Harris are treating you. Look at what I'm going to do. I'm showing up. I'm bringing aid. And again, remember that he's repeatedly invoked Elon Musk's name in this kind of conversation of, look at the people I will bring to help you out to get services, whether it's internet connectivity or other things in terms of infrastructure to rebuild from this storm.
So, Finn, with what Jake just said and Trump trying to position himself as the change candidate, even though he has been in the White House for 4 years, how are Harris and Walz distinguishing themselves from what we have seen in the administration?
So they're saying that they're focusing on the character of Donald Trump. They are also focusing on what Donald Trump did as president in his previous 4 years. And they're saying essentially they can contrast that. They can contrast and be the new wave, as Harris, her slogan is on the campaign trail, a new way forward. And I think that what we're seeing now is they're really trying to emphasize the contrast between how divergent they would be in terms of their policy and Donald Trump's policy. And again, going back to the character issue, the Harris campaign believes that right now some of their biggest contrast points are the character issue of Donald Trump, the character of Donald Trump, and that of Vice President Harris, that they believe would be more presidential and lead the country more admirably and positively, frankly, on some of these key areas like immigration, like foreign policy, and other top issues that voters are currently considering as they make this big decision again, we're just 2 weeks out until Election Day.
And we're going to continue to pull on that character debate thread in our next segment with Major Garrett. But Jake, Trump did an interview with retired WWE star The Undertaker. Is there an untapped voter he's trying to go for with this kind of appearance, or is it simply appealing to his existing base?
Well, many campaigns right across the country are looking at high propensity voters, those people who are likely to vote. In terms of what they're doing now with these constant podcast appearances, we've seen on the Theo Von podcast, we see the Nelk Boys, another influencer group. We've seen Donald Trump do these interviews pretty consistently throughout the trail, 1 or 2 airing a day. They tape them usually in bunches. But we've seen as this appeal to a younger male audience, people who maybe are less likely to vote, maybe admire Donald Trump for what he's done and stands for, but maybe aren't the most likely to go and vote in droves necessarily in some of these critical states in terms of that kind of macho enthusiasm that we've seen. We saw with Hulk Hogan at the RNC. We've seen it with people who Donald Trump has associated himself with on the campaign trail, like Dana White, the head of the UFC. So again, this is part of just kind of this macho bro culture that they've kind of tried to appeal to down the home stretch here.
Finn Gomez and Jake Rosen in Washington, thank you both so much. CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. Major, good to see you. Trump will be back in North Carolina Tuesday, his 12th visit this year, making it his second most visited battleground state. What electoral path does his team see that they're honing in on this state?
Now, they have to have it, Lindsay, and it's interesting. In 2020, Trump won North Carolina by just over 74,000 votes. The margin there was closer than it was in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Of course, Trump didn't make any noise about the closeness of North Carolina because he won. He made noise about Pennsylvania and Michigan, decided by more votes than he won by in North Carolina because he lost there. We should all keep that in mind. And it is clear now, in ways that it wasn't when Joe Biden was still leading the Democratic ticket, that North Carolina is very much in play. And the Trump campaign needs its 16 electoral votes because it needs that base in order to build off of that if it wins Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or some of the other closely contested states. Without North Carolina, the map begins to fall apart for former President Trump. And what's also happened in North Carolina in the last couple of months has been the implosion of Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's campaign for governor. At one time, Trump called him, Mark Robinson, Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids. When asked today by Politico if he still wanted North Carolinians to vote for Mark Robinson, all Trump had to say was, "I'm not familiar with the status of the race." He has completely disassociated himself with Mark Robinson. That's going to pull Republicans apart, not bring them together in North Carolina, which is why the Trump campaign is spending so much time there.
I do want to ask you about Trump's rally in Pennsylvania over the weekend. He spent several minutes talking about the late golfer Arnold Palmer since the rally was in his hometown. Let's listen.
This is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable."
I almost can't ask this with a straight face, but what are we to make of him spending time on this in the final stretch to Election Day?
Before that rally, Trump advisors said that the rally speech would be part of his closing argument. What the manhood of Arnold Palmer does or doesn't have to do with a closing argument in a presidential campaign mystifies me the same way it mystifies you, Lindsay. One thing I do know, because I'm a golf fan, Arnold Palmer was a tremendous golfer, a tremendous champion. He would never, ever, in any company, have said the things about himself that former President Trump implied. Why he did it will always mystify me.
Still can't believe we're talking about this. Before we let you go, Harris's last-minute strategy when it comes to discussing Trump seems to be to highlight the character difference. We were just talking about that with Finn and Jake. Is that resonating, though? You spoke with Debbie Dingell on your show today, America Decides. She says voters are still getting to know her. Is there a sentiment that her campaign is focused enough on kitchen table issues?
Debbie Dingell would say probably not, that they could be a little bit more muscular on economics, on housing, on inflation, on jobs, and give the story about the Biden administration's accomplishments there more robustly than they currently are. I asked Debbie Dingell if there was still time to do that. She said there is. As we always say in this business, until Election Day, stay tuned.
Major Garrett, thank you. Israel said Monday it plans to continue targeting a Hezbollah-run financial institution in Lebanon. The Israeli military claims some customers have been depositing funds into the banks to help finance attacks against Israel. However, many civilians with no links to Hezbollah extremists also use them. Israel's government said a Hezbollah drone targeted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's private home on the Mediterranean coast Sunday. Neither he nor his wife were there at the time. It's the second attack targeting Netanyahu in recent months. CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio has more from Tel Aviv. Remy?
Lindsay, good evening. Tension across Tel Aviv today. Israel's military downed 5 Hezbollah drones over the Mediterranean Sea, and flights were halted at Ben Gurion Airport for a short time. And separately, just after sunset, we heard a boom rumble across this city. Moments later, the IDF sent out a notification that it was a projectile crossing from Lebanon, but that it fell in an open area in central Israel. Now, all this happening as Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to land here in Tel Aviv imminently for his 11th time since Hamas attacked last year to try to resurrect a ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, President Biden's special envoy, Amos Hochstein, is back in Lebanon for what he said was his 6th or 7th time there. He landed just after Israel's military launched airstrikes on dozens of facilities used to finance Hezbollah. A U.S. official told CBS News that he is there to try to find an end to the conflict. And today he did meet with the Lebanese speaker, Nabil Berri. And that is notable because he is aligned with Hezbollah. Blinken, meanwhile, is expected to shuttle around the Mideast, perhaps to Qatar and Egypt too, since they have been mediating countries through the end of this week. Also looming over all of this, Israel's expected retaliation against Iran for its attack on October 1st. The U.S. says that the THAAD missile defense system that was sent here last week is now in place. Lindsay.
Remy, thank you. Later this hour, CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us for more analysis on the conflict in the Middle East and the U.S. investigation into the leak of Israel's alleged plans to attack Iran. A bipartisan House task force investigating the July 13th assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump said the event was, quote, preventable. That's according to a preliminary 53-page report detailing the shortcomings of the Secret Service and law enforcement that led to the deceased shooter Matthew Crooks opening fire at the rally in Pennsylvania. The findings were compiled by 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats who conducted 23 interviews with witnesses. Their report reads in part, quote, fragmented lines of communication allowed Crooks to evade law enforcement and eventually climb onto the roof of the AGR complex and fire 8 shots. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from Washington. Scott, good evening. What other new information have we learned from this report?
This July 13th failure was unprecedented. It was unacceptable. And to a degree, before July 13th, it was unimaginable. So it's not surprising there are so many different investigations into what went wrong with the Secret Service that day. This House bipartisan task force report includes things we've seen before, but also a few different notes that explain or at least detail the lack of urgency among some in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. They described this walkthrough, this protocol-laden walkthrough that law enforcement did before the event, and they describe it as happening without urgency. Like people were milling about. It seemed unfocused, without unnecessary energy behind it. They also detail what happened when the Butler Township police officer, the one who got atop that roof and saw the shooter with his AR rifle coming down yelling, "Somebody's on the roof, man on the roof with an AR." And as the task force explains in its report, Lindsay, there's no indication that warning got to Donald Trump's security detail inside the Secret Service. The U.S. Secret Service has responded to this task force to CBS News and to the previous report, saying they're already making the changes recommended, that they're improving their communication, including their interfacing with local law enforcement. But there's yet another indication in this report that what happened that day was highly preventable, yet wasn't prevented.
I mean, we knew about the lack of communication between Secret Service and local law enforcement, but the fact that there was a lack of urgency is startling. This House task force is also investigating the September Trump assassination attempt at his golf course in Florida. That occurred after Acting Director Ronald Rowe called for a paradigm shift at the Secret Service. Do we have any indication of how that investigation is going?
We know they're continuing to look into that West Palm Beach incident from September 14th. They've had little time to work their way through it. It happened 2 months later. But we also expect a final report from this panel by the end of December, in which we expect recommendations for what went wrong or what didn't go wrong in Florida with that second attempt. We can tell you our latest CBS News reporting about the defendant in that case, a man named Ryan Routh. He's asking for a new judge to be assigned to his case. The judge assigned right now is Judge Eileen Cannon, whose name may be familiar. She was the Trump appointee who dismissed Trump's classified records case in a controversial decision in July. And per our latest check, Lindsay, that case set for trial now in mid-February.
Another story you have been following. What can you tell us about this new lawsuit from the Central Park Five against former President Trump?
A different legal issue here. This is a defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress civil suit filed in Philadelphia. What the group of plaintiffs is alleging here is that Donald Trump defamed them when he talked about the Central Park Five at the September 10th presidential debate in Philadelphia, saying during the debate that they had pleaded guilty and that the case resulted in a death. The lawsuit says these men did not plead guilty and that there was no death in that case. That case, again, filed in the U.S. District Court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. A summons in the civil suit has now been issued to Donald Trump.
Scott McFarland, thank you. Lawmakers in Texas were set to hear unprecedented testimony from a death row inmate, but at the last minute, it didn't happen. We'll explain why lawyers for the man at the center of a shaken baby syndrome case did not want their client to take the stand just yet. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy! It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone,
This could happen to anybody.
and sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson's testimony before a Texas House committee has been postponed over arguments about him appearing virtually in prison versus in person. The 57-year-old was scheduled to be executed Thursday for the 2002 death of his 2-year-old daughter. Prosecutors allege the child died from shaken baby syndrome, a diagnosis which Roberson's attorneys say is based on flawed science. They maintain she died from severe pneumonia. The Texas Supreme Court granted a stay on Roberson's execution hours before it was set to take place to allow him to respond to a subpoena from a Texas House committee. CBS News national correspondent Nikki Batiste joins us now. Nikki, Roberson's attorneys were saying that due to his autism, he shouldn't be forced to join that hearing via Zoom. What happened with that Monday?
They didn't want him to join via Zoom because of his autistic diagnosis. They say he really needs to be in person. He's been in prison for 21 years. He's never really experienced Zoom on top of the fact that he has been diagnosed with autism. We're still waiting to hear what the final decision will be. There are said to be conversations between the AG's office and these lawmakers. The last we heard, he will not testify in person. Here, he may never testify at all. But one of the chairs of this committee said if we have to go to the prison to get his testimony, we will. Obviously, that's logistically challenging, and it likely would not be live streamed to the public if that did happen. Lindsay?
Walk us through the Texas 2013 junk science law that Roberson was asked to speak about, and who else spoke in his defense today.
Yeah, that's really the crux of this hearing. This law was designed back in 2013 to basically reevaluate any science that may become outdated over time in a criminal case. For example, DNA evidence. We've all seen it evolve over the years and lead to exoneration. So in this case, we're talking about shaken baby syndrome. There's been a lot of debate about the credibility of shaken baby syndrome used in these criminal cases. So that's really what this is looking at. The first witness was Dr. Phil. He talked about meeting with Robertson in prison. Then we heard from John Grisham, the author who has talked a lot about exonerations and is a part of the Innocence Project. And then for me, the most interesting witness so far today was a juror who was on the original trial of Robert Roberson. And she said, if I knew what I know now, if I knew that, according to his defense, the cause of death was complications from pneumonia for his daughter, Nikki Curtis, I would have voted not guilty. She said there's so much that she knows now that would change her mind.
That
Lindsay?
is fascinating. So he's still sentenced to die. Do we have any idea of a timeline or what is going to happen going forward?
It's a really good question because we really are in these unprecedented legal waters. The one person we thought had the power to give any sort of clemency delay was Governor Greg Abbott. He hadn't weighed in at all until this morning. He's condemning this subpoena, this move by these lawmakers, saying, I'm the only one that should have this power. And if we grant this subpoena, if we let this go forward, we're essentially rewriting the Constitution. As it stands, according to Texas law, a new execution date could not be set for Robert Roberson from 90 days from the original date, which would be about mid-January, but a lot of question marks. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. Lindsay?
Nikki Batiste, thank you. Babies in the U.S. have started dying at a higher rate than they did before the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade in June of 2022. That's according to new research by the medical journal JAMA Pediatrics. The study compared infant mortality rates by month from 2018 through 2023, and it found that rates spiked to 7% higher than expected during at least 3 months in the post-Roe era, when some states enacted strict abortion bans or restrictions. That translates to roughly 250 more children dying in those months than the average. Many of those deaths were attributed to congenital fetal abnormalities, which are typically tested for at the earliest 8 weeks into a pregnancy. At least 21 states ban abortions before that point. Authorities are investigating after a helicopter crashed into a Houston radio tower Sunday night, killing 4 people on board. CBS News correspondent Jason Allen has the latest from Texas.
Police here in Houston still have several blocks cordoned off today. This is blocking access to homes and businesses, and it's all around this crash site, investigation site that they say is up to 4 acres in size, where this helicopter and this communication tower came down. It was just before 8 o'clock Sunday evening. Security cameras caught this chopper as it was heading toward this tower, flying about 600 feet above the ground. But this was a 1,000-foot tower that it collided with. And then there was an explosion, and both the chopper and the tower came crashing down to the ground. There were 4 people on board that chopper, Houston police said, including a child, all of them killed. However, they said there was no damage to any of the homes or businesses here on the ground. That debris didn't land on anything except for a few vehicles. However, they have been collecting pieces of that debris that they think will be important in their investigation. They've been doing that throughout the day. The owner of the tower had issued a notice to pilots within just the last week that some of the warning lights on the tower may be inoperable. The owner, though, told CBS News that was something standard that it did when taking over operation of a new property. It didn't give specifics about whether the lights were on or off, but that will be something investigators are looking at, as well as any of the pilots' communications and preparations for that flight, as they try to figure out exactly what happened when that helicopter hit the tower. Jason Allen, CBS News, Houston.
The Pentagon is investigating a possible leak of classified U.S. intelligence about Israel's plans to attack Iran. Ahead, we speak with national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata about the contents of the documents and how this breach could affect Israel's next moves. You're streaming The Daily Report.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Here are some additions to our top stories. The U.S. Navy has released the names of the 2 aviators killed in a fighter jet crash in Washington state. This is obviously not the right video, but Lieutenant Commander Lindsay Evans and Lieutenant Serena Weilman, both 31 years old, died after their Growler jet went down during a routine training flight on October 15th. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. The Supreme Court has rejected Michael Cohen's bid to sue his former boss, Donald Trump, for retaliation. The one-time fixer for Trump claims the former president was to blame for sending him back to prison instead of home confinement in response to Cohen's critical tell-all memoir. The justices did not explain their reasoning in the brief. The Biden administration is proposing a rule to provide free over-the-counter birth control and other contraceptives to women with private insurance. The rule expands a federal mandate under the Affordable Care Act. If finalized, the policy would go into effect next year. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Sunday that the U.S. is investigating a security breach that led to the alleged leak of classified documents about Israel's plans to attack Iran. The materials became public over the weekend on the messaging app Telegram. The documents, first reported by CNN and Axios, detail weapons transfers allegedly intended for a strike on Iran. They also say the U.S. is aware of recent Israeli military exercises conducted in preparation for a possible Iranian attack. A retaliatory Israeli strike has been expected since Iran fired nearly 200 missiles at Israel earlier this month. Iran says those airstrikes were in response to Israel's increased attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, including the assassination of the group's leader. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, thank you for being here. How serious is this leak? How does something like this happen?
Well, it's serious and it's obviously sensitive. Defense officials I spoke with here will only say they're looking into it. The question is, was it a leak or was it a hack? And if that's the case, where will there be more of them? It first popped up over the weekend on that text app that you said that had previously posted pro-Iranian content. Now, they first said it came from a whistleblower at the Department of Defense after saying it was originally a leak from U.S. intelligence. But the Biden administration and others have called it very concerning. Now they'll have to figure out the source of that leak and try to make sure this isn't the first of many, as we have seen in the past. And if it's legit and we're not being steered away that it's not only highly classified information, but it shows how closely the United States is monitoring Israel.
So how does this affect how and when Israel might strike at Iran?
Well, there's not a lot here. I've got the 2 pages. That's a big giveaway, or necessarily compromises Israeli forces. It describes like the positioning and repositioning of weapons, getting missile launchers and drones into place, moving some of their own missiles out of harm's way, dispersing is how they described it, to keep them safe from an Iranian counterattack. At least in these 2 documents, it isn't like a detailed layout of Israeli forces. It's more of a broad overview of Israeli readiness to strike Iran. But it is recent. It was October 15th and 16th, according to these documents. But for us, it's telling us what we've been told and reporting for several days now, that Israel is and has been in position to launch a significant attack on Iran in retaliation for that Iranian bombardment on October 1st.
Are there any indications Israel could use nuclear weapons against Iran?
Well, we're not going to read chapter and verse of these documents for obvious operational security reasons, and they're technically classified if they're legit. But there is one single reference to that, which reads, "We have not observed indications that Israel intends to use a nuclear weapon." What's interesting about that? Well, it's widely accepted that Israel has nuclear capacity. The Israelis have never officially acknowledged that.
The U.S. and Israel have always shared a very close-knit relationship. How does this leak affect that?
Well, it's not going to help. It shouldn't be much of a surprise that the United States has been using its vast surveillance and intelligence capabilities to get a handle of what's going on in the country and outside the country, first and foremost. And we're told that all the time. This is all about the protection of tens of thousands of U.S. forces across the region. But there's been frustration, some made public, some not, from the White House on down, that Israel has been less than forthcoming about informing the U.S. of major operations, like killing Hezbollah leader Hussein Nasrallah. The Israeli defense minister was informing the U.S. defense secretary of that operation while it was underway. He was on the phone to him. So the U.S. has sent considerable weapons to the area to defend Israel, including that new THAAD missile defense system. And, let's face it, a major strike in Iran has the potential to draw U.S. forces closer into this fight.
What are you watching for in the next few days?
I think we'll look for movement. What we have been told, and we've been asking pretty much on the hour, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen? And events kind of got in the way, including, the killing of Sinwar last week. But as I said, I just need to nailed down the fact that those Israeli weapons to launch an attack like the kind that we're expecting, the scale of the attack in terms of drones, in terms of missiles, in terms of their own self-defense, is already set to go, just waiting to pull a trigger. But, you know, we're told that may not be that far away.
Charlie D'Agata at the Pentagon, thank you.
Thank you.
Jury selection began Monday in the trial of a Marine veteran accused of putting a man in a fatal chokehold on a New York City subway. CBS News New York's Alice Gaynor was inside the courtroom and has details.
When the judge asked the pool of prospective jurors who had heard about this case before, most raised their hands, which the judge noted was not a surprise. This is a case that made headlines around the country. 25-year-old Daniel Penny entered the courthouse as demonstrators chanted "murderer" outside. The Marine veteran pleaded not guilty to manslaughter and negligent homicide in the death of 30-year-old Jordan Neely after placing Neely in a chokehold on board a subway train in May 2023. Witnesses described Neely, who struggled with homelessness, mental health issues, and drug addiction, as acting erratically. Penny told detectives Neely entered the F train talking gibberish, throwing things, threatening to kill everyone. Prosecutors say Penny used excessive force. A search for weapons on Neely only yielded a muffin in his pocket. Responding officers felt a faint pulse, administered Narcan, then later began CPR, but Neely died. Attorneys for Penny and the Neely family spoke outside.
The truth is only going to come out through this trial. There's a lot of evidence that people aren't aware of.
And that's justice here for Daniel Penny to go to jail, and it's going to be an easy case for this jury to agree on.
A judge wanted to find out which prospective jurors might have potential conflicts with scheduling, who might know someone on the witness list. This was not about specific questioning of prospective jurors today. That will come later in the process. Today, more than 130 prospective jurors were pre-screened. 45 were asked to come back for that questioning on Friday. The rest were dismissed. The pre-screening process resumes tomorrow. Outside of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, Alice Gaynor, CBS News, New York.
Cuban officials are working to restore electricity throughout the country as blackouts there continued for a fourth day. Power has been out since Friday after one of the country's largest plants failed. Protesters went into the streets Sunday banging pots and pans to voice their frustrations over the lack of water, food, and electricity. State media on Monday reported power is back on 50% of the island. Officials are hoping to have everything restored by Tuesday. Their efforts have been complicated by Hurricane Oscar, which made landfall Sunday. It brought heavy rain and strong winds to the country. The system has since been downgraded to a weaker storm. Flash flooding in New Mexico killed at least 2 people over the weekend. Officials say the city of Roswell saw 5.78 inches of rain Saturday, breaking a previous single-day record set back in 1901. More than 300 people had to be rescued from the floodwaters. City officials say water has begun receding in some areas, but meteorologists say more rain and flooding are possible this week. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced an additional $400 million military aid package for Ukraine during a visit to Kyiv Monday. The trip is likely Austin's final visit to the country as Pentagon chief under the Biden administration. It's the latest effort to ensure U.S. support for Ukraine ahead of the presidential election, where the results could have an impact on future aid to the war-torn nation. In a speech, Austin warned that a lack of Western support could have severe consequences for the rest of Europe and the world.
But we should all understand that Putin's assault is a warning. It is a sneak preview of a world built by tyrants and thugs. A chaotic, violent world carved into spheres of influence.
As Austin arrived in Kyiv, Ukrainian officials said Russia launched a series of drone attacks in and around the capital for a second night in a row. Immigration is shaped up to be a major focus heading into Election Day. Our Omar Villafranca is on a week-long journey visiting southern border towns to speak with local officials and residents about the issue and what they want to see from the next commander-in-chief. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Recent CBS News polling shows immigration and the southern border are big issues for voters ahead of the presidential election. Migrant encounters were down to 54,000 last month, nearly 200,000 less than last December's record high of 250,000. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca has embarked on a 1,690-mile journey from Texas to California along the U.S.-Mexico border. He started his journey over the weekend where he traveled to Laredo, Texas. There he spoke with the mayor and discussed how that town collaborates with its Mexican counterpart.
We live and work here. We know that a lot of people come to this side to work. There's family interactions, there's relatives, there's a lot of people that share the same cities. Mm-hmm. This used to be one city before it was divided with the wars and everything. So that's why they're both Laredos, two Laredos.
On Monday, Omar made his way to Presidio, Texas, his last stop in the state before moving on to Columbus, New Mexico. He'll then make his way west toward California, where he's expected to wrap up his border journey in San Diego. Omar Villafranca joins us now from Presidio, Texas. Omar, what misconceptions are you finding about some of these border towns in Texas?
Well, Lindsay, as you mentioned, 1,600-mile-plus journey. We're about 600 miles in. But in that first 600 miles that we've traveled, the people who we talked to on these border towns, everywhere from Mission to Laredo to Del Rio here in Presidio, one theme and a through line that we said is there's a huge misconception that these border communities are not safe. And they said that is absolutely false. As a matter of fact, we've talked to business owners and people who live here in Presidio, and they kind of whisper to us, they're like, I leave my keys and my wallet in my truck, and I leave my truck unopened. They leave their front doors open. They said this is a very friendly and safe place. A business owner just told me he's dropped his wallet in front of his business, and a friend of his actually walked by, hit him in the back of the head, and then handed him his wallet and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You dropped your wallet," you know? That's the kind of thing that really gets under their skin. They say this is not the Wild West. These border communities are safe. What you hear in reports or people using the border as a political battering ram, they say are not true, and they have the facts and data to back it up. So that's one of the biggest misconception that everybody is telling me about.
I feel like we hear that cycle after cycle, that there are so many misconceptions, and it's not the Wild West that we hear of. I'm from Arizona. I reported in El Paso, it was the same thing. You're in Presidio now. It's not known for being a busy migrant location, but it doesn't have a border wall. What can you tell us about this area?
Well, it's interesting. You're right. They don't have those migrant surges. There's not a lot of people coming in here from Central and South America because there's not really a bus line that'll take them anywhere here. This is a small town. The other side, the Mexican town on the other side, is actually the bigger. 30,000 over there, 5 over here. Mayor told me they don't want a border wall at all. This area is very tight with the other side. Matter of fact, they say that on Friday nights, there's a big mariachi band playing over there. A lot of people are going to go over to the other side and go have dinner and watch the concert and then come back over. One thing that they do want from the administration, whoever that is they want to beef up CBP presence here. Not for immigration enforcement per se. They're saying they want more business coming over from Mexico. They said there's cattle and produce and some limited goods that are coming over from Mexico. But if they got more CBP inspectors, then more products that already come over from Mexico, more could come. That means more trucks coming through. That means more business coming through, more money for the town. They even want to put a toll on the bridge. This is one of the few bridges where the state of Texas owns it. There's no toll on it. There's a toll on the Mexican side, not on the Texas side. They said if they could toll that bridge and the city could get that money, they could redo part of the sewer system, more infrastructure stuff. They actually want a bigger CBP presence, as I mentioned, to help business here, which is interesting to hear. They want that business coming here.
How do these towns look now compared to last year when we saw just those record numbers?
Well, in Laredo, where we're at, they've never had a big migrant problem, surges that we see, or Presidio as well. But when we were in Del Rio, we passed through Eagle Pass, you weren't seeing those huge numbers right now. The mayor of Laredo told me part of it, he believes, in his opinion, is President Biden's executive order. And he also gave a head nod to Governor Abbott, saying maybe Operation Lone Star is working as a deterrent. Now, mind you, you're not going to hear many people say that, but he did say maybe that is working here in the state of Texas. For people who aren't familiar, Operation Lone Star is a state-run program where the Texas governor is sending DPS troopers all along the border. You probably remember the headlines. They're stringing razor wire out. They can't really arrest a migrant coming over. They're not CBP. They don't have that authority, but they can bottleneck them to an area where they can be processed there. So that's one thing that we are seeing here. There's no big surges coming in here, but now we're coming to the part where it gets cooler this time of year, so we may start seeing them later on.
Omar Villafranca, much thanks to you and your crew. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of your reporting this week. It's a very interesting idea, and I know that you'll be delivering all week with this information, so thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
This East Coast-West Coast rivalry goes back decades. The New York Yankees and Los Angeles Dodgers are getting ready to face off in the World Series for the 12th time. We'll have more on the latest battle in this classic rivalry. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The unseasonable warmth, which kicked off the weekend for most of the U.S., is expected to stick around until at least midweek. For more, here's meteorologist Felicia Combs from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Well, a lot of us have been thinking, where is fall? Because it has not been very fall-like at all. Warm and dry fall continuing for many of us. Now, for a lot, that has meant sunshine and mild temperatures, but highs 10 to 20 degrees above average heading into tomorrow and through the early part of the week might not be what you want for late October. Warm, dry air continues to be the story for much of us as that high pressure remains in place. We're just not having anything to break up this pattern. Cooler air staying well off to the north. Meanwhile, we're seeing that warmth stay especially across the southern tier with this well above average temperatures for a lot of us by the middle part of the week, stretching all the way up to the international border with highs 15 to 25 degrees above average for portions of the plains. And then if you were hoping for some rain, well, there's not a whole lot in the forecast. Expect very little, just one minor little area of rain we could see as this front moves through and brings some cooler air. And Lindsay, for more in-depth coverage, watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming device.
Felicia Combs, thank you. The New York Liberty outlasted the Minnesota Lynx in a winner-take-all overtime classic to win the franchise's first WNBA championship Sunday. The Liberty won 67-62 in front of a sold-out home crowd in Brooklyn. It was a long time coming for New York. The team is the only WNBA franchise without a championship. Liberty's Jonquel Jones was named the final's most valuable player, leading the team in points in Game 5. New York City will hold a ticker tape parade for the champions on Thursday. The stage is set for a star-studded World Series matchup between two of baseball's most iconic franchises, the New York Yankees and Los Angeles Dodgers. The Yankees punched their ticket to the first World Series since 2009 with a win over the Cleveland Guardians Saturday. The New York team only lost one game in a dramatic 5-game series. On Sunday night, the Dodgers ended a better-than-expected New York Mets season with a victory to win the series in 6 games. Now the Fall Classic heads to Hollywood. Game 1 of the World Series begins this Friday in Los Angeles. This is the first time the two teams will face off at the World Series in 43 years. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. Vice President Harris and former President Trump crisscross battleground states to make their final pitches to voters as millions of Americans are already casting their ballots. We'll have analysis of where the candidates stand in their race to the White House. Plus, a bipartisan House task force says the Butler assassination attempt against Trump was preventable. We'll dive into the findings and what they mean for the Secret Service. And highly anticipated testimony from a Texas death row inmate is abruptly called off. We'll explain why Robert Roberson did not show up for the hearing. You're streaming CBS News.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government